Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at something that I think affects pretty much everyone in one way or another, office spaces,
Yeah.
and specifically how they've changed over time.
Right.
You sent me some really interesting stuff, actually, a master's thesis on like the evolution of the workplace, some specifics about Erste Group Bank AG and their new headquarters called the Erste campus.
Yes.
And then just some really cool like statistical data. And I think our goal today is to kind of figure out
Yeah.
how do you have offices changed and what does that actually mean for businesses and employees?
Absolutely. And I think it's more than just, the furniture, the floor plan. It's really about, how has work itself changed? How has the economy shifted? How has technology changed? And how do different generations view work? And how has that kind of all led to the offices we see today?
Yeah, and actually it's kind of wild to think about how many of us DO work in offices now. A century ago, most people had jobs that, required physical labor.
Yeah.
How did we end up with so many office jobs?
Well, it was a gradual shift, but over the last 100 years or so, there's been a massive change in the types of industries and jobs that, are kind of the most important. And this knowledge-based work and this knowledge economy required a very different type of workspace.
Right.
And that's where offices as we know them came from.
Yeah. The thesis actually mentions Luxembourg as like a really prime example. Their economy relies super heavily on financial services.
Right.
And something like 65.9% of their workforce
Wow.
are office workers.
Yeah.
That's like the highest in all of Europe.
Really puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah. Austria's rate is lower, like 50.5%,
Okay.
but still significant.
Absolutely.
And it's not just developed economies either.
No.
We're seeing similar trends in emerging economies as well.
That's right. As economies develop and become more focused on services and technology, those office jobs tend to grow pretty rapidly.
Okay, so that makes sense that, there's been this big shift towards office jobs. But it makes me wonder, like, why are we so focused on office design today? It seems like it's more than just finding a place to sit for 8 hours.
Well, yeah, it's not just about having a desk anymore.
Right.
Offices are now seen as environments that can either help or hurt productivity, collaboration, creativity, even well-being.
Okay.
So designing them well has become this really critical factor for businesses.
Gotcha. So let's go back in time for a minute.
Okay.
What did offices even look like back in the day?
All right, so picture this. It's the 1970s.
Okay.
You walk into an office, your desk is piled high with papers.
Oh, gosh.
You've got this clunky rotary phone, a typewriter within reach.
Wow.
And there's probably a haze of cigarette smoke in the air.
Oh, man, things have changed.
They have.
It's amazing how much we used to rely on paper, like just everywhere.
It's true.
And computers weren't those like giant machines that only a few people had access to back then.
You're exactly right. Those early computers were these massive things that took up entire rooms.
Yeah.
But then the 1980s brought about the personal computer.
Oh, okay.
You started to see fax machines.
Right.
Which seemed pretty high-tech at the time.
Yeah, totally. And those dot matrix printers.
Oh, yeah.
Still remember that? Sound like a robotic bee swarm?
I know exactly what you mean.
But even with those changes, it sounds like there is still tons of paper involved.
Oh, absolutely. Paper was still king. But things really began to shift in the 1990s.
Okay.
Computers became much more commonplace. Bulky CRT monitors started appearing on every desk.
Yeah.
And the internet started to take off.
Right. And what about those like first cell phones, like the brick phones?
Oh, yes. You practically needed a carrying case for those things.
Yeah, but then the 2000s brought about those sleek LCD monitors, laptops, and thankfully a focus on ergonomics.
Right. Those were welcome changes.
I bet.
And another welcome change. Smoking indoors became a thing of the past.
Oh, good.
So by the 2010s, the modern office we know today really started to take shape.
Okay.
Open floor plans, collaboration, sleek technology, and a much bigger focus on employee well-being.
I like it. That visual journey through the decades really shows how much offices have changed.
Yeah.
Both in how they look and how they actually function.
It's true.
And what's interesting is I think we've all kind of experienced some version of this office evolution, like in our own careers.
You're right. It makes you think about what your ideal workspace would look like now.
Yeah, it does. But speaking of change, we got to talk about technology.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly been this major driving force in office evolution.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to look at how technology at work and technology at home have influenced each other.
Okay.
In the past, companies were usually the first to adopt these new technologies.
Mm.
And then those technologies eventually made their way into our homes.
Like the LCD monitors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then something really interesting happened.
Okay.
The mobile revolution kind of flipped the script.
Interesting.
Now, individuals often have more advanced technology in their pockets with their smartphones than their workplaces can even offer.
Wow.
So now it's almost like individuals are leading the way in tech adoption.
I see. And so that brings us to that whole bring your own device thing, the BYOD trend, right? Where employees are using their personal devices for work.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of challenges does that create?
Well, it creates a lot of challenges for companies, especially when it comes to managing security.
Mm-hmm.
When you have all these personal devices accessing company networks and data,
Mm-hmm.
it opens up all sorts of vulnerabilities.
Right.
And from an employee's perspective, it can be really hard to separate work life from personal life
Totally.
when your personal phone is also your work phone.
Yeah. But, before we jump into BYOD, let's talk about the device that I think has had maybe the biggest impact
Oh, yeah.
on how we work.
The smartphone.
The smartphone has revolutionized the way we work. There's no doubt about it.
Right. It's incredible how much we rely on them for, emails, scheduling, taking notes during meetings.
Absolutely.
I've even seen people take pictures of whiteboards.
Yeah.
My phone really has become this extension of my work life.
And the data really backs that up.
Does it?
One of the sources mentions that now U.S. adults get most of their digital content through their smartphones.
Wow.
Which is a huge shift from just a few years ago.
Mm.
And get this, Austria has over 160 mobile subscriptions.
What is
Every 100 people.
That's a lot of smartphones.
That's a lot of smartphones. And it definitely speaks to the potential of BYOD.
Yeah.
But it also really highlights those security concerns we talked about.
Definitely. But let's get to this specific example of a company that was trying to deal with all these evolving office challenges.
Okay.
Erste Group Bank AG.
They faced a lot of common issues, departments spread out across multiple buildings,
Right.
inefficient use of space, and a real lack of collaboration.
Yeah, those are pretty classic growing pains for a lot of companies.
Yeah. And it sounds like they decided to address all of these challenges head on with this pretty ambitious project called the Erste campus.
Yeah, they did. And
Yeah.
their CEO, Andreas Treichel, was actually quite vocal about how these physical distances between departments were creating communication barriers.
Interesting.
They realized their workplace was actually hindering their success.
Wow. That's a pretty big realization for a company to make.
Yeah, but it led them to take a bold step.
Okay.
They decided to consolidate 25 buildings into one impressive new headquarters.
That's wild. So tell me about this Erste campus.
Yeah.
What's it like? What were they trying to achieve with this new space?
Well, imagine this modern open design that's a world away from their previous fragmented setup. It's essentially located in Vienna near the Belvedere Palace, and it really represents this visual and symbolic break from their old way of working.
I like it.
And they had 4 core principles guiding the design:
Oh, okay. What were they?
openness, communication, identity, and orientation.
Those sound like really great aspirations, but
Yeah.
how did they actually translate those principles into the actual design of the building?
Well, for example, they have this sprawling garden deck
Oh, cool.
that connects different sections of the building.
Okay.
They have a variety of restaurants
Nice.
to cater to different tastes, and they even have a financial museum called the Flip,
Cool.
which is open to the public, so it's not just an office building, it's a destination.
I like that. That's really cool. But I'm curious, how did they actually solve that problem of those scattered departments and the lack of communication?
Right.
How'd they tackle that?
That's where their concept of home bases comes in.
Home bases. Okay. I'm intrigued. What are they?
So think of them as these mini neighborhoods within the larger office complex. And each home base has this unique code like B21, which makes it really easy to find your way around. The first letter indicates the building section, the first number is the floor, and then the last number tells you which home base on that floor you're looking for.
That's pretty smart.
It's much easier than remembering a bunch of random room numbers.
Yeah, totally. And it sounds like within each home base, they actually have different types of workspaces.
Yeah, they have standard backbone focus and team workplaces.
Wow. Okay, so break those down for me. What's the difference between a standard and a backbone workspace?
Okay, so both standard and backbone are considered standard individual workspaces.
Okay.
But there are some key differences.
Okay.
Standard workspaces have desks that have adjustable acoustic panels, so you can have some privacy when you need to focus.
Nice.
Each desk has an adjustable chair, a 24-inch LCD monitor, and network connections.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a cool feature. You can adjust the desk height and save your preferences to your personal access card.
Oh, that's handy. So you can personalize your setup each time you sit down.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. What about Backbone?
So Backbone is similar in that you have your adjustable chair
Mm-hmm.
and your monitor, but the desks in Backbone don't have those acoustic panels,
Okay.
and they have extra built-in storage.
Gotcha. So it's for people who maybe don't need as much privacy
Yeah,
and like to have everything at their fingertips.
that's right.
Okay, now tell me about Focus workspaces. Are those like mini offices?
They're not quite mini offices. They're designed for focused work,
Okay,
but they're not enclosed.
gotcha.
Think of them more as these designated quiet zones within the home base.
Okay.
And just like the standard desks, you can adjust the height and save your settings to your card.
So it's still an open environment,
Mm-hmm.
but there are areas that are specifically for people who need to concentrate without distraction.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the team workspaces?
So the team workspaces are designed for, well, teams. They're larger desks that can fit up to 6 people.
Gotcha.
Perfect for working together on projects or brainstorming.
Mm-hmm.
And they're flexible, too.
Yeah.
So you have these movable acoustic panels that you can use to create different configurations depending on what you're working on.
Well, that's cool. I like that they considered so many different work styles
Yeah.
and created both individual and collaborative spaces.
Yeah, it's all about choice.
Right. It sounds like a really well thought out design.
It is, but it's not just about the different types of desks.
Okay.
There's also this shared space in each home base called the middle zone.
Oh, the middle zone. Okay, I was
Yeah.
wondering about that. What's that all about?
So it's kind of like the heart of each home base.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shared space that's meant to encourage interaction and community.
Okay, so it's not just rows and rows of desks.
No.
There's like a social aspect to it.
Exactly.
Okay, what kind of stuff can you find in the middle zone?
We have things like lockers for your personal belongings,
Okay.
a wardrobe, phone booths for private conversations,
Yeah.
printers and shredders, even compartment mailboxes.
So all the essentials are right there.
Right at your fingertips.
But you said it goes beyond just the essentials, right?
It does. They also have hot desks for people who don't have assigned seating,
Okay.
different kinds of seating for like informal meetings or breaks,
Mm-hmm.
and even some cool meetup areas where people can just chat and connect.
It sounds kind of like a community center in some ways.
It does have that kind of vibe.
You know, with all this shared space and open design, I'm just imagining that things could get a little chaotic without some ground rules.
Oh, yeah.
Did they put any guidelines in place for working in these home bases?
They did. They have what they call home base habits,
Home base habits. Okay.
which are basically a set of rules for how to work collaboratively in this new open plan environment.
It's like a roommate agreement.
Exactly. A roommate agreement for the office.
Okay, what are some of these home base habits?
Well, some are pretty straightforward,
Okay.
like cleaning up after yourself. Seems obvious.
Yeah.
But it's important in a shared space.
Right.
They also encourage people to be mindful of noise levels,
Mm-hmm.
respect their colleagues' need for quiet.
Yeah.
And since the whole space is designed to be flexible,
Right.
people are encouraged to work in different home bases depending on what they're doing.
So you can't just hoard a desk or blast your music.
Exactly. You got to be considerate of others.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, it would be really interesting to hear what our listeners think.
Yeah.
Like, does your workplace have similar rules,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're written or unwritten?
Right.
What works and what doesn't?
Yeah. Definitely share your thoughts with us.
But back to Erste Group.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't just assume this new space would magically solve all their problems.
No, I didn't.
They actually track data to measure the impact of all the changes they made.
That's smart. A data-driven approach to office design.
Right. They were serious about making sure this new space was effective.
Yeah, and one of the most important things they were tracking was their desk sharing rate.
Okay, desk sharing rate. So explain that to me.
So their goal was to have a desk sharing rate of 80%,
Oh.
meaning 8 desks for every 10 employees.
Okay, so they wanted to reduce the number of desks overall.
Right.
Why was that so important?
Well, before they moved, their desk sharing rate was actually 110%,
Wow.
meaning they had more desks than employees.
So much wasted space.
It was a lot of wasted space and money. You know, their old office layout just wasn't efficient.
Wow, that's a huge difference. How do they even calculate that desk sharing rate?
So they take the total number of physical workplaces
Mm-hmm.
and divide that by the total number of employees.
Okay.
And keep in mind, they count everyone as a full-time employee,
Okay.
even if they only work part-time.
Oh, interesting. So like even part-timers are factored in as if they need a full-time desk.
Exactly.
What about like vacation time or sick leave?
Yeah, those factors aren't specifically included in the desk sharing rate calculation.
Okay.
But, the average sick leave in the financial sector is about 9.6 days per year. And then you have 5 to 6 weeks of paid vacation on top of that.
Right.
So in reality, the actual desk occupancy is probably even lower
Okay.
because people are out of the office for various reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point. So did they hit that 80% goal after the move?
Well, right after they moved, they were at 93%,
Okay.
which makes sense because they were coming from a situation with way more desks than people.
Yeah.
But then over the next 2 years, they hired an additional 550 employees,
Wow.
which brought the desk sharing rate down to 83%.
Okay, so pretty close to their target,
Yeah,
which is a massive improvement from where they started.
absolutely.
But, beyond the numbers, did this new workspace actually change how people worked and how they felt about their jobs?
That's a real question, isn't it? And those results might surprise you.
Okay, well, let's find out. So we were just talking about Erste Group and that big move they made to their new HQ, the Erste campus.
Right, with those home bases.
Yeah, those unique home bases. And we were about to get into, did it actually have a positive impact on the company and the employees?
Right, because a fancy new building is great,
Yeah.
but did it actually change anything?
Exactly. Did it affect how people work and how they feel about their jobs?
It's a question a lot of companies struggle with, when they invest in new workspaces.
Right.
But Erste Group didn't just assume that everything would magically work out perfectly. They actually tracked a bunch of data to measure the impact.
Data-driven design. I love
Yeah.
it. What kind of data did they track and what were the results?
Well, one interesting thing they noticed was a significant decrease in the number of employees asking to move offices.
Oh, so people were finding spaces they liked and staying put?
Yeah, exactly. In the old offices, the space management team was constantly moving people around
Mm-hmm.
as departments grew or needs changed. But since the move to the Erste campus, those requests for individual moves have pretty much disappeared.
Wow, that's impressive. So it sounds like those home bases are flexible enough to accommodate all those different work styles and preferences.
That's the idea. People aren't feeling stuck in spaces that don't work for them.
Right. And here's another question. Did this new workspace have any impact on the company's, image?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, their ability to attract new talent.
Yeah, they definitely did. Their employer branding has significantly improved
Okay.
since moving to the Erste campus.
So it's not just about the employees who are already there. It's also become a recruiting tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When a company invests in creating this modern, supportive, and inspiring workplace, it sends a strong message to potential hires.
I see. So it sounds like the Erste campus has been a big success so far.
Yeah, it seems to be working pretty well, but there are always areas for improvement.
Oh, of course. Were there any lessons learned or areas where they felt they could do better?
One area they identified was their meeting room culture.
Okay.
Apparently, some departments were booking way more meeting rooms than they actually
Yeah.
needed.
Oh, so they were hoarding meeting rooms.
Yeah, kind of. They were reserving more space than they actually ended up using.
I can see how that would be a problem, especially with, a limited number of desks.
Right, exactly. People need spaces to collaborate,
Mm.
but they also need individual workspaces. Finding that right balance is crucial.
Yeah, so what was their solution? Did they just build more meeting rooms?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
They're looking at ways to manage those meeting room bookings more efficiently.
Okay.
One idea is to implement a system that automatically releases rooms
Mm-hmm.
that aren't actually being used.
Smart.
Maybe even use sensors to detect occupancy.
Oh, that's cool.
Another idea is to encourage people to work from home more often, to
Yeah.
free up desks in meeting rooms.
That makes sense if there are fewer people in the office.
Mhm.
You need fewer desks and meeting rooms.
Exactly. It all comes down to what they call active workplace management.
So a dedicated team that's constantly analyzing
Yeah,
how the space is being used and making changes as needed.
exactly. The workplace isn't static. It needs to evolve along with technology, employee needs, and the company's culture.
Right. So the big takeaway here is that office spaces aren't just places we go to work anymore.
No, they're not.
They're these dynamic environments
Mhm.
that can actually impact our productivity, our well-being,
Mhm.
and even a company's success.
It really makes you think about your own ideal workspace, doesn't it?
It does.
What would be most important to you?
Yeah.
What trade-offs would you be willing to make?
Yeah.
The future of work is being designed right now,
Mm.
and everyone's input matters.
That's a great point. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of work,
We do.
whether we're, designing office spaces, managing teams,
Mhm.
or even just thinking about our own relationship with technology.
Right. We can all contribute to creating a better, more balanced way of working.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into office spaces.
Yeah, we hope you found it interesting.
We'll be back soon with more deep dives into the world of work.
And in the meantime, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
We've been talking about, how offices have evolved, from those 1970s offices to those more modern spaces like the Erste campus.
Yeah.
But now I kind of want to get into how technology is blurring those lines between our work lives and our personal lives.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, technology gives us all this freedom and flexibility. We can work from anywhere. We can collaborate with people across the globe, and we have access to information instantly.
Yeah, it's true. Just think about how much easier it is to stay connected and get stuff done.
Yeah.
But it's also led to this always-on mentality, where it can feel like we're never really off the clock.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword, and I think that's really where the tension lies. How do we enjoy all the benefits of technology without letting it completely take over our lives?
Yeah, one of the sources actually mentioned that technology is evolving faster than workplaces can adapt. Do you think that's true?
I think there's definitely some truth to that. In the past, companies were usually the early adopters of new technology.
Right, like we were saying before with the LCD monitors.
Exactly. Offices had those way before they were in our homes.
Yeah.
But then the mobile revolution came along, and it really kind of changed everything.
It really did.
Now people often have more advanced tech in their pockets with their smartphones than their workplaces can even offer.
Right, so the tables have turned.
Exactly. And this has really fueled the whole BYOD trend.
The bring your own device.
Bring your own device.
Right.
Where employees are using their own personal devices for work.
Yeah, which, has advantages and disadvantages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, it makes sense for employees to be able to use the devices that they're most comfortable with. And it can boost their productivity.
And it can be cheaper for companies.
Yeah, companies might save money if they don't have to provide everyone with the latest gadgets.
But then you have those security risks.
Yeah, security is a huge concern when you have all these personal devices accessing company networks and data.
Right.
And it opens up all sorts of vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and for the employee, it can be hard to maintain that work-life balance.
Yeah.
When your personal phone is also your work phone.
It's true. You check one email after dinner and suddenly you're responding to messages late into the evening.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
It is.
It really highlights the need for clear boundaries and expectations, both for individuals and for companies.
I think companies need to be really careful not to create a culture where employees feel pressured to be available 24/7.
Right.
And employees need to be proactive about setting those limits and protecting their personal time.
Totally. It's all about finding that balance. Technology should enhance our work lives.
Yeah.
Not dominate them.
It should serve us, not the other way around.
Exactly. So knowing all this, what does it mean for the future of work?
Yeah.
How do we design workplaces that embrace technology, but also prioritize well-being?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
I think we might see more emphasis on creating spaces that actually encourage digital detox.
Like tech-free zones?
Yeah, designated areas where devices are off limits.
I like that.
And I think we'll see a lot more companies adopting more flexible work arrangements, giving employees the freedom to work remotely when it suits them.
Right.
While still having those collaborative spaces when face-to-face interaction is important.
So it's about finding that sweet spot,
Exactly.
creating a work environment that's technologically advanced, but also human-centered.
That's it.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is that the future of work is still being written.
It is.
And we all have a role to play in shaping it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether we're designing those spaces or managing teams or even just thinking about our own relationship with technology.
Right.
We can all contribute to creating this better, more balanced way of working.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed it.
And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing those boundaries of what's possible in the world of work.
We'll see you next time.